Brooks Dyroff here, CEO of The Street Sheet. I am on the phone with Nick Greenfield, a good friend and the co-founder and CEO of Candid. So Nick, thanks for joining. Nick, tell me a little bit about Candid just to kick off the conversation.
Brooks, good to be here. Not on the padel or the tennis court. We're in the shockingly on the internet together.
Yep.
Brooks and I have a relationship that's mostly in real life, which is, many people don't have that anymore, but we do.
It's too cold. It's too cold to go outside today in Florida. It's a whopping 55 degrees down here, so we had to stay inside for this conversation.
Yeah, we had the fur coats on this morning. We're laughing, but everyone in Florida knows that that's a serious comment.
Yep.
So really great to be on. A little bit about Candid. Our flagship product is called Candid Pro. It's really the first orthodontic solution designed around the needs of the general dentist. People know our big competitor that we would call Big Blue. You'd know them probably as Invisalign. They have been around for about 27 years. Definitely the market leader today. Product mostly used by orthodontists and general dentists who know how to do ortho. And about 90% of dentists out there do one case or fewer per month, which means that most of their patients, if the average dentist sees about 2,000 patients, most of their patients are not getting diagnosed and not getting treated for their orthodontic needs. So we said, hey, let's build a product that helps fix that challenge. It's an orthodontics in a box solution to enable the everyday general dentist to do ortho and really do it at scale. And we have been around for about 4 years in this iteration of Candid. We started as a different company. And since that pivot, business has been growing really quickly, have a couple thousand active customers on the platform using it, and really excited about where we're going over the next decade.
I love it. I think we'll kind of double click into the company in just a second. But before we do that, I actually want to humanize the brand a little bit with you as the face, right? Because to me, that's like a lot of times the most interesting when I talk to different startup founders, advisors, fund managers is like, okay, that's where you are today, but tell me a little bit about where you grew up. Like, how'd you ultimately get to Candid? Where'd you work? Where'd you go to school? What'd you work on after school? How'd you ultimately get here? Give me a quick kind of background about who Nick Greenfield is.
I grew up in the DC area, which is not necessarily known for its startup community, much more known for political things, if you will, and certainly more now than ever. We see that in front of us. So I was very interested in international relations and poli-sci and history. Went out to Stanford for school, and during that time learned what a startup was. At the time, I had no idea what a startup was. I played ultimate frisbee in college. I played baseball, basketball in high school, and decided to kind of get into this sport, which was a bunch of ex-soccer and basketball and football players and tennis players who wanted to play a competitive sport in college. And at the time, I was probably 22, graduating school, had no idea what I wanted to do post-graduation, and wanted to stay in the Bay Area to play Ultimate. So I found a startup to work at, and that startup was a company called Zimride. We ended up launching Lyft out of Zimride. I was one of the first 4 people working on Lyft. And I would say the rest to some extent is history. When you're at a high growth startup that's really kind of fast paced and, growing, how a lot of AI stuff is growing today, you kind of can't get away from it. Like there's this just excitement in the air in that moment, and it becomes intoxicating. And I've worked at a couple other startups before Candid, but certainly going through that experience early days at Lyft and my friends working at Uber and Airbnb and DoorDash and all in that kind of last wave of what the iPhone ultimately enabled to happen, being part of that in San Francisco was just life-changing for me. And so since then, I've started Candid, and I've kind of advised and invested in a handful of really exciting high-growth startups, and definitely would consider myself at this point a startup guy, and perhaps more now than ever, probably a dental guy, as I've gotten really deep into the dental industry.
The dental guy thing is so good to me because you've been able to kind of reinvent yourself on that front. We'll come back to it. And I was just thinking through this. You graduated. What year did you graduate? 2000?
I graduated in 2011.
Okay. And then, for anybody who ultimately ends up listening to this, Nick and I actually met, I think, because of your journey at Lyft, I was in either Boston or New York at the time. And I think you were launching one of those cities, and a mutual friend, and you're staying with a mutual friend. And so the world is very small. And, that we've been friends basically for probably about a decade now. So it's seeing you go from that to another startup, maybe two, and then into kind of your own, CEO role in Candid has been really neat. When you think about Candid, what is the ultimate vision for the company? Like, what's the dream outcome for Candid?
When we started Candid, kind of 1.0, which was originally 2017, we had thought about the ability to increase accessibility and affordability to oral healthcare writ large. As I've been deeper in the industry over the last almost decade, I've learned a whole lot around the connectivity between systemic health and oral health, and the lack of connection. When you think about insurance, like the insurance covers your whole body, but it doesn't cover your mouth, which is just like totally nuts.
Yeah.
And the amount of research that goes on between the connection on, overall health and oral health is still very limited. There's more and more conclusions around, gingival or gum health and periodontal breakdown, and the implications around bacterial growth, and then heart disease, Alzheimer's, memory loss and dementia. All of these things are interconnected. And I think Candid, starting with orthodontics and inside of the general dental practice, you think about it almost like the foundation is your ortho. And if your teeth aren't hitting the way they're supposed to be hitting, you don't have the right foundation. Over time, I believe that gives us the right to think about at least being the company that bridges that gap between oral systemic health. And no one's really done that. I think you've got, the largest publicly traded companies in dental are either dental distributors, an implant business, an aligner business, but they're not thinking about that kind of broader connectivity. So we have an opportunity to do something there. It will take us, over a decade from now for sure to even think about bridging that gap. But we know that kind of there's more in this category than what has been offered so far.
I love that. And actually, you and I have never even spoken about that. And I read, admittedly, it was a tweet, but a couple months ago, connecting, like when you wake up in the morning and you kind of have that dry mouth and a lot of, unfortunately, the germs that have accumulated in your mouth over the night, like you're really supposed to kind of take care of your teeth, your mouth, wash your teeth right away. You don't want to be ingesting a lot of germs through your mouth into your gut. A gut is like the gut's something that I've been paying attention to a lot. So what you just said makes sense. Like if it kind of starts there, that's where you need to take care of it before a lot of these germs and kind of bad practices can even enter your body, at a larger stage. So I didn't know that. That's super interesting.
I mean, think about what you do through your upper respiratory system. You breathe, you eat, you swallow, so you've got all the saliva coming in. It is the gateway, which means you're breaking down, all the food that you chew, you're breaking it down before it goes into your body. And then obviously their digestive system is in charge of ingesting and digesting, and then ultimately disposing of waste. And when you breathe, if you think about breathing through your nose and or breathing through your mouth, right, you're taking oxygen in, you're breathing oxygen out. So all of that runs through your nasal cavity or your mouth. And orthodontics, fundamentally, whether through fixed appliances or through clear aligners, is really the only way that we make non-surgical changes to that area. So if you have something that's not fully formed or is kind of deformed, if you will, right? You have a bad bite, you have what we call malocclusion, or you have constricted sinus passages. There's not that much that you can do. You need to open up and create more space. And you think about the implications there for not just your breathing, but also the quality of the air, for example, that you're getting into your body, the bacterial development that's happening in your mouth, the food that you're putting in your mouth. It's all connected. And many times we see the symptoms of those problems, for example, a cavity or major like gingival recession, and these symptoms ultimately become we call in the dental industry full mouth restorations, where people spend tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime on dental work. But your enamel is supposed to last for 100 years. Your teeth are designed and built to last for your entire lifetime. So we just think about, hey, how can we help your mouth last without needing tons of dental work until, after you're dead? And there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make that happen, because we're going the other direction as a society right now.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, I love that. So it's kind of the vision for the company. Now, here's a pair of questions. What gets you up in the morning? Like something you're super excited to work on every day, and could be short term, long term. Just like why do you love kind of going into the office? And then what keeps you up at night? What's a concern, right?
Our internal company motto is customer obsession drives profitable growth. And I get really excited getting up in the morning and going to speak with our customers, to speak with our sales team that's out in the field, working with our customers, understanding where are the pain points and problems, and what opportunities do we have, and then how do we design and build product to solve those challenges for our customers. Over the last 3 weeks, I've had 3 different customer conferences that we have thrown or been a part of, including one in Jackson Hole, one in Orlando. I've got one out in California later this week. And getting to go in front of those customers, understanding what they want, what they've been using, how our product can now fit into their workflow, and ultimately how it'll power our company, just goes such a long way in terms of driving that growth. You hear it over and over. You hear CEOs say, spend more time talking to your customers. And we definitely do that from the CEO level all the way down at Candid. And I think that the biggest challenge that I have is getting more customers, which is we're relatively unknown. We have sub 20% brand awareness with dentists. And we need to figure out a way to get the word out there about our product. So 4 years in market now, multi-billion-dollar revenue opportunity across the US and internationally. And how are we going to take where we are today across 2,000 customers and make that 20,000 customers? And that definitely concerns me every single night. It concerns the whole team. And that's what our sales team is really focused on driving and helping to grow this amazing business that we have.
That's actually such a good segue into kind of this. Another question that I have is like, what has been your most successful marketing campaign or channel? And like, talk to me about the psychology of what makes a successful win on the marketing and sales side for this.
I found that building community is a really critical mechanism for driving customer growth. And I'll just talk a little bit about one of the customer conferences that we put on for a select set of doctors. We had about 20 customers this past weekend in Orlando, a small subset, right? Sub 1% of our overall customer base in person together. But all of those doctors were at the same stage of practice growth. These are dentists who are, probably 10 or 15 years max in practice. They all have, call it 2,000 patients. They're all doing 1 to 2 cases a month with us, and they all want to grow to 5 to 10 cases a month. And they all are learning from each other. So what we saw at that conference is not just listening to speakers, but we saw these doctors engaging with each other, sharing best practices. And so when we walk out of it, the benefit from a company perspective is, yes, hopefully the learning that they take away from our setup. We had, key opinion leaders and lecturers and marketing experts and growth experts coming in and helping them to think through that. And that's why they wanted to come to the conference. But what they're going to take away from learning from each other and ultimately collaborating on how to use our product better and other products in the dental industry, being the company that is helping drive that experience for them is invaluable. And when we have our next customer conference coming up next year, everyone's coming back, because they've got so much value out of that. So that creates tons of value for us. We're going to be able to tell their stories, and then they're going to be able to tell their stories as leaders in the community to a customer conference that will have a similar customer archetype, but probably be 200 doctors. So this is, again, one of the things that we're thinking through organizationally is how do we drive and build community at the national level, and how do we drive and build community at the local level? Because those peer-to-peer relationships ultimately drive higher utilization. They drive purchasing behavior. And for us, we're so aligned with our customers in terms of we only do well when they do well, that we want to make sure that they can have a continually better experience.
I love that. And I think like when I think about marketing in the financial space, it always comes back to one word for me, which is trust. And so like you're creating just by getting one person to the event and making sure that they have a good time, you're kind of establishing the brand as a trustworthy brand. You're putting if you're speaking there, you're kind of putting your face in front of these persons. But then the community aspect of it takes it one step further, is they trust it so much that it actually even ends up kind of turning into advocacy, because they're talking to other practitioners. Maybe it's a little bit more of like this word of mouth building and buzz that comes out of the community events. Those are, I mean, I know you know this better than I do. Those are just trickier to scale compared to, let's say, like a meta campaign that goes really well, right? Like that's the only knock maybe against in-person events and conferences, I would assume, but the scalability is probably what you guys are trying to unlock at the national level, so that you can, I guess, tap into more of these really warm relationships that then turn hot after these conferences.
And I think about doing things that won't scale as a learning mechanism to be able to scale. And take Airbnb, perfect example. You know, if you remember Airbnb in the early 2010s, they had these garbage photos on all the profiles, and it really turned people away from wanting to book an Airbnb location. And what the founders at Airbnb recognized is that aesthetic design and experience on their website could be an A+, but if the photos from the hosts were not there, it didn't work. So they hired an army of professional photographers to go in and take photos kind of one by one, location by location, which, you know, in theory, a professional photographer coming in and staging and taking photos of an apartment is not a really scalable exercise, especially as an early stage startup with expense. But ultimately it drove the click-through, it drove the booking acceptance, it drove overall satisfaction, it drove host loyalty and supply side loyalty. And when you would compare an Airbnb to another location or the same location on another third-party booking site, they just didn't look as good. And so consumers ultimately, with that aesthetic appeal, decided to go to Airbnb more, and then they scaled that program globally. So you got to figure out things that you can scale, again, potentially in a local way, and then figure out how to take that national if the ROI is there. You know, having somebody who spent hundreds of millions of dollars life to date on Facebook, you know, buying right-hand side ads with 3% click-through rates on desktop back in 2011, and, you know, launching some of the very first mobile install ads in, you know, 2012 and 2013. I love the scalability of that platform. But I do think, especially in a B2B business context, it does have limitations.
Super interesting. I think the second part of this conversation, and it can probably weave into Candid and your experience there, but I want to actually flip it and talk a little bit about markets, the economy, even some kind of personal trends, convictions, holdings, to the extent that you can share them. And I always tell our guests this: they don't have to. There's certain compliance things that they can't. But let's kind of dive into that for a second. So if you can share it, or if you want to kind of maybe talk around it, but what's one of the biggest holdings / positions, or maybe what would you like one of your biggest holdings and positions to be in your personal portfolio today?
Well, I'm going to take that question and actually just give a hat tip to some of the founders that are in the Miami startup ecosystem that we're in. You know, Brooks, as hopefully folks know, is down in Key Biscayne, which, you know, some would consider part of Miami, and I'm on the beach. And, you know, we have some incredible founders here, and these are founders who have been in Miami either since inception or since their companies were relatively small. So just to name a few of these, you've got Chris Terlica from MaintainX, a company where it was doing $500K in ARR when he moved here, kind of co-headquartered in San Francisco and Montreal. And that's a juggernaut business that has raised at, north of 2 billion, and it's not AI froth. It's like a real business that we've been executing. Michael Delgado of Canals. Canals was a business that he bootstrapped, all the way to 8-figure ARR, and is now scaling that over, one of the fastest growing SaaS companies I've ever seen. Again, based here in Miami. You got two of the founders of Ramp are also down in Miami, and they moved here, when that business was also sub 10 million ARR and, announced north of $1 billion in ARR. I think we have some amazing founders who are down here who are hardcore executors. And one of the things about Miami is that it is proximate from a travel standpoint to the rest of the country. So while I think there's a lot of folks who, including myself, who would much rather be building in-person office environments, going through the COVID experience and seeing what some of these incredible entrepreneurs in the Miami area have done. I mean, another one just comes to mind is Jeremy Levine of Underdog. Jeremy's down here. That business is an incredibly fast-growing company. Has been at the top of the App Store in terms of fantasy sports and online sports gambling. I don't think they're in it yet, but those companies, the FanDuels, the DraftKings, and Underdog is one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing among them. So again, these are guys who are here, they're executing, they're getting things done in ways that I didn't think were possible from at least a remote context. And we're seeing this next evolution of kind of either hybrid or fully remote companies, which have been delivering at an incredible pace here out of Miami.
Those guys are crushing 100%. You actually, I had like a 4-part question in this series, and kind of went to the third and fourth, which is like, who is some of your favorite and most inspirational founders and CEOs? So you just named a bunch. Who's the one that you know that you look up to the most?
I'm going to give a shout out to Angus Pacala, who is the CEO and founder of a company called Ouster. Ouster is a publicly traded company that is in the LiDAR space. Angus, went and really invented this concept of silicone-based LiDAR, meaning he wanted to put the entire product development cycle on a chip. And he did this in 2015, 2016, after leaving a battery company, or a LiDAR company before that, and a battery company before that. So he has really been at the forefront of innovation when it comes to autonomy. And Brooks, I don't know if you've been to Brickell or the beach and seen all those robots that are driving around, the Serve robotics, little robots, which are really just in a few markets. And there's more and more of them every day. If you look at the top of those robots, there is an Ouster LiDAR sensor that's sitting on the top of those Serve robotics, moving kind of humanoid style delivery robots. And you can just imagine that the world is going to go from having, I think they shipped 3,000 or 4,000 last quarter, some small number of those, to tens of thousands, to hundreds of thousands. And having the foresight and resilience to go through what they've been through as an organization a decade later, and finally hearing and seeing the future of autonomy coming through, this physical embodiment of sensors is just next level. So I think seeing Angus kind of battle through a lot of financing challenges, about market challenges around questions, passing $1 billion in market cap, again, kind of deservedly earlier this year. This is the type of company where you look at 10 years out, and you're like, could it be 10, 20, 50x from where it is today? Yeah, possibly. And again, it's that resilience and determination that you've seen from him.
Really cool. Okay. Great response. Now, who is a favorite inspirational founder CEO that you don't know, and why? And part of why I want to do this is because if the universe just happens to put this recording in front of the CEO and I can make a connection any way possible, who do you look up to? Who would you love to have a conversation with?
A company that I'm really interested in is Intuitive Surgical. Many people will not have heard of Intuitive, but Intuitive made what is probably the most successful and most oftenly used surgical robot, which is for abdominal surgery, is kind of the dominant laparoscopic tool to do these little tiny incisions and then be able to do surgery kind of Edward Scissorhands style. And that company has been perhaps the most successful from a market cap growth standpoint medical device company of all time. And they built an incredible business model, and no one has been able to replicate or build what they've built in the health space. That is, I think, where the future of healthcare is going, is more automation, more robotics. So as everybody kind of is up in arms and excited about, AI tools that are software driven, I think it's this combination of real world physical, where we can start helping people who, for example, have major issues in their body with robots, making surgeries way lower risk, way faster recovery times. And just the implications of that in the future are so much more there's just so much more that we can do. So I would love to kind of understand the thinking there and where that business is going to evolve.
I love it. All right. Well, we're putting it out in the universe that we can connect you to so you can have a conversation. Two more questions on my end. If you won the lottery, you go to 7-Eleven, you pick a ticket, and you have $1 million. It's in your pocket. What do you do with that money? Where do you allocate it?
Unfortunately or fortunately, I'm so tied into the technology world and startups that that's probably where I'm going to be allocating it. And just thinking about, what to do with it there. There's either you've got the time, the energy, and the connectivity to invest directly into companies, or finding some of the, most exciting up and coming fund managers that, want a founder to be part of their platform. I'm very fortunate that I have a handful of friends who, just because of our age, are starting their own funds. They're, 30, 50, $100 million funds that, have really, really strong hypotheses and connectivity and can be really value additive to kind of seed and early stage founders. Given I'm younger, I have a longer investment horizon. And so that kind of pre-website, pre-idea investing is definitely where I like to spend my time.
It's awesome. Awesome. And the very last question is, outside of business, outside of investing, what is your personal definition of success?
I think that for me, being able to create space and time to truly be present and there with my kids is just mission critical. I feel very fortunate that as a dad, I got to be there and be there more often, given I, was working from home at the time with my first kid. And we developed an amazing bond that I think had I been, just in an office from, 7 to 9 every single day, which I think had we been in office world, I probably would have been doing that and wouldn't have gotten to know her except on the weekends in the same way. And not that it made me work any harder or differently, but just being there for those little moments, for the opportunity to be there and strike that bond. I think about some of the most successful people in the world and what they've said about what they regret. And it's almost always, I wish I had more time to spend with my family. And I think I'm trying to live that now within the context of running and operating an incredibly intense startup. So just making sure that I can create that space to be present and be with my kids is critical. Just like you went fishing on Sunday with your son, which I know.
No, that's exactly it.
That's definitely something there for you as well.
It's this balance. And it's really hard because how do you kind of match like career ambition and the time that can soak up, right, with the minutes you want to spend with your kids and your family. And it's tricky, but I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of how I'm trying to optimize my life too, is just how can I buy time? How can I buy time with the people that I love?
And I don't think there's any balance. I mean, I'm on the road once or twice a week, every week, and I'm grinding, and it's only possible because my wife, who also works, is taking on a ton of that load and really, playing the heavy in everything. But when I do have those opportunities and moments, I really want to take advantage of them as much as I possibly can.
Awesome. Let's say this goes viral and you can make an ask for Candid. Could be even like to meet with new dentists, new clients, could be just general brand awareness. This gets turned into a meme and now everybody knows Candid in a good way. What would you ask if from the universe, if anything comes from this?
Two things. I want dentists to sign up for Candid and start using us. We are I believe we are the best orthodontic solution, especially for general dentists that are out there, and we can help you build and scale ortho inside your practice. So that's definitely number one. And number two is sales reps, which is we want the best reps in the industry to come work for us as we start building out more of our territories. They're the ones on the front lines engaging with and working to make our customers successful. And as many dentists as I would like to come to us, we need to make sure that we have the best reps out there that can see and implement and help their practices grow.
It's awesome, because if and when we post this on like LinkedIn, which I plan on doing, we can kind of make that call out at the bottom, especially for reps. So Nick, I love it. I am looking forward to seeing you soon, but thanks for hopping on today, and we'll be following Candid, and I'll share these materials with you when they're live.
Thanks, Brooks.
All righty. Speak soon.